Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Hello, gentle listeners, and welcome to the latest episode of the Fort Worth Masonic Podcast. We are happy to have you with us once again. My name is Gabe Yagish, and I am the immediate past master of Fort Worth Lodge and current marshal.
I am Billy Hamilton, and I am no longer the junior past master of Fort Worth 148.
I'm Rhit Moore, and I'm a way far has-been.
Does it get to feeling better and better as time goes on?
Oh my gosh, dude. The moss is heavy. Heavy as the back with the moss.
That's a good feeling. Yeah, no, I ran into Henry Hackbush, who was my counterpart at Panther City Lodge. And so he and I are now both junior or immediate past masters of our respective lodges. And I bumped into him and I was like, hey, Hackbush, how you doing, man? And he's like, I'm doing great now that I'm not master anymore. And I said, I know the feeling. It's so good.
Yeah. Well, it's a good time, but definitely it does come with its own challenges.
Yes, it does.
To say the least. Well, we're going to talk MasoniCon today.
Yes, MasoniCon 2022.
2022.
So, gentle listeners, I will be playing the part of the audience today because I don't actually have firsthand experience of MasoniCon 2022. I will be asking questions on y'all's behalf and to satisfy my own curiosity, because when we had MasoniCon 2022, I was busy holding a newborn in my arms. So I could not go.
New too, like brand new.
Like 3 days old, I think.
That is some next level slack planning there. That's
I'm telling you. That's one heck of a way to get out of some work.
They're like, sorry guys, I have to be a dad.
I know at one point Gabe was like, man, I just feel like doing a drive-by or something, and we were all like, do not leave that house under any circumstance unless there's a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was gonna say y'all were being pretty responsible. I was just plagued by the fear of missing out.
Yes, I can only imagine.
It was FOMO City.
Yeah, I mean, because you did. I mean, you were an integral part of the planning as always, and then not being able to enjoy the fruits. It is. I could imagine, but I'm sure it was a lot more fun holding that new baby. New baby boy. Yep. So let's start festive board, because last year, where did we have it? Well, 2019, the last time we had it.
2019, the festive board was located at Joe T Garcia's.
Okay.
And that we rent it. And so to kind of set the scene for y'all, for those of you that weren't at the festive board, which I know a lot of our listeners were not physically able to make it to that, that's not a problem. Joe T Garcia's is kind of a longtime staple of Fort Worth. It is Tex-Mex restaurant. The atmosphere is incredible. It's one of those restaurants that you go to where really what you're looking for is the atmosphere, the egregore of the place, as it were, or to use the language of the teens today, the vibe. And it is a beautiful location. And it's got lots of private rooms for it. And so we rented this like tiny little casita type place that has, a second story that's used for storage and stuff. But the entire first floor is like a dining area. And it's kind of like a tiny little house that's on the grounds of the restaurant. And so we rented out the bottom floor and we set up Not a very traditional setup for a festive board.
Yeah, it
because
wasn't.
we weren't able to have the U-shaped table, but we had basically a double barrel row of tables,
No.
and we made that work, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, which it was fun, but it was nothing compared to what we had this year. Yeah, because I mean, the decision to have it in the asylum there at the temple, which was all, I mean, I give the credit to Billy for, because you held your dinner for your installation for Commandery there, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that when I saw those pictures, you had the table set up in a cross, and the red ribbon. I was like, oh my gosh, that was that was made for a festive board. So we pulled the audible and had it on the fourth floor, and goodness gravy.
Yeah, the photos that I saw were, I mean, it looked almost, it looked mysterious and beautiful, and it looked just like a incredible environment to do that in. And I know that from doing the installation dinner at Worth Commandery, I know how good that must have been to have done. So
well, and the best part about it is there wasn't a bunch of kitchen noise and background noise, so you had these individual conversations going on and they weren't interrupting each other. It was, if it got quiet, it got dead quiet in that room, so it was perfect for the speaker. You could hear them great. The conversations going on, I mean, it was I mean, as close to perfect in my mind as you can get for a festive board. Plenty of elbow room. I mean, I can't think of any detraction from it, except for maybe the blinking fluorescent lights, apparently. We almost put Sean DeBon into a seizure.
So the one bit of feedback I got about that was that the layout and the ambiance was amazing. I did get a feedback though. So one of the members of our lodge, he does mead, and I did get some feedback that mead is kind of sweet, and so there were some people who would have preferred that if we would have stuck to a wine, or at least had a non-sweet option for those who didn't want to do sweet toast after sweet toast.
Yeah, and I think that originally that was the plan, but the when the rubber hits the road, some things get left undone, and that was one of them.
Well, and that's one of the things that you just carry over to the next year, because I think that if we did meat again, that'd be fantastic. And then you just say, hey, this is part of our dessert course, right? Where you have you treat, instead of having a dessert wine, you have mead, and that's a perfect fit for it.
An award-winning mead at this point.
Yes,
delicious.
Yeah. So for those of y'all that this is a plug here. He doesn't pay us or anything like that, but one of our lodge members. I'm not actually sure if I have permission to disclose his name, but I will disclose his business. His business is Bee and Brew, and they make mead. And they recently won. They won second place in the Mazer International competition, and so that's kind of a big deal. It's a huge step forward. We're all super proud of him.
Oh yeah, and it is good mead for sure.
So not to detract from the mead, just some people would have liked an option.
Yeah, and I can't blame them for that. That's absolutely, it was our intention. Just fell short.
How was the service done? Was that like a buffet line, or did they do table service?
They served us, yeah.
Yeah, it was table service.
I feel like that's always the better option with festive boards.
100%, because you get to talk while they serve you.
Yeah.
You don't have to stand in the buffet line, which no matter how quick it goes, that's 15, 20 minutes of the night.
And it's so disruptive.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
So that will always, no matter what we do, I think that was a hit, have the service done for sure. And the meal was fantastic as well. That was a great meal.
Yeah, it was steak and I can't
Brussels
remember
sprouts was with it, which were out of this world, but I love Brussels sprouts. What was the other thing? There was cheesecake, some kind of chocolate cake, and a delicious salad. Had some cranberries and stuff in it. Yeah, it was wonderful. The kicker, the absolute stunner of the whole night was our keynote speaker, Chuck Dunning. which we all know and love Chuck Dunning. But he, after we asked, and he was like, sure, you got your guys' backs. I'd love to support you. About a month later, he contacts me. He's like, hey, do you think it would be inappropriate if I just read some of my poetry instead of did a talk? I was like, actually, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
And then it happened. He did it. And it was unbelievably awesome. What I love most about the format of it is if I remember right, he did 4 different poems. So he'd read a poem and talk about it, and you'd have your little thoughts and, side discussions, and then he'd get on to the next one. So it was like perfect for a dinner meeting. There, it wasn't like a long drawn out presentation. It was short, quick hits. And it just resonated so well with the ambiance and, the atmosphere. And it went perfect with a festive board to where I'm going to be hard pressed not to have poetry at every one now.
I like that because it's, we think about, masonry and its connections to the arts, obviously to the arts and sciences, but very particular to the arts. Poetry is one of those arts. And we always talk about the great Robert Burns, the poet laureate of the Grand Lodge of Scotland, and how fantastic he was. So, yeah, I think poetry has a really great history in masonry. And the fact that Chuck chose to go in that direction is fantastic.
Man, I love it.
Every single person I've talked to about it, and I've done follow-ups with most of the speakers at this point in a fair, I would say probably a dozen attendees or more. Every single one of them has had nothing but glowing praise for the poetry reading.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and we're kicking around the idea of doing some kind of contest where the winner would come, read at the festive board.
Ooh, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, hey, everybody submit this. We could, I like that idea.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention we could use all of the poems if it were, popular enough and do something with those. But, the winner or first 3 or something come present at the festive board. I think it'd be a great way to encourage poetry because it's such a dying art. I have one of my great grandfather's journals, and on about every other page is a poem. It was just so common for not just men, women, everyone wrote poetry back in the day, and it just kind of fell off. I wish it would come back.
How did y'all do with the festive board ritual? How did that go?
Oh, like we've done it 100 times.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes, I was. You can ask the guys. I was pretty pushy about everybody being ready, and we even did a floor school with it and everything else. But man, they were. I say like they've done it 100 times. They had some polish on it. It was great. Corey Applewhite even memorized his part. I mean,
that's fantastic.
It's like not necessary, but great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love that. Right, we're as a lodge we have such a clear idea of what we want to do as a lodge that like, hey, a lodge function is going to be a floor school for festive board, right? That's cool.
Yeah.
That just, you said that and that kind of stuck out to me as, hey, that's actually kind of a super cool point to make is that, hey, not only was this done well, but it was actually rehearsed and practiced and coordinated beforehand,
Yeah.
And,
yeah. We charged a lot for those tickets, although, I think the overhead, we came out like 98 cents is what we made on every ticket that we sold for $100. So it was
I was doing the math on it. And at one point before so Sean ended up finishing out a lot of the planning for the festive board, and he ended up executing a lot of it as our lodge's new junior warden. I had done a lot of the preliminary work, and I just had to pass it off because things were getting really crazy, and I knew that the baby was about to arrive. So I was like, Sean, you're junior warden, please take this. And he did great with it. And I remember running the figures for it, and you had asked me something about napkins or something, and my response was like, yeah, but once we do that, we lose $4 on every ticket. So,
we were skimming it close. Not that this was ever meant to be any kind of fundraiser, but we just, we're kind of trying to keep ticket prices down and everything. But, for a good steak meal, right now, the price of beef you're going to pay.
Yeah. So tickets were $100. Do you feel like that was worth every penny?
Oh my
To me, it sounds like it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, because you're talking steak dinner in a formal dining environment in a beautiful room with a world-class, like literally internationally acclaimed Masonic speaker. Can't get better than that.
No,
Really
it's
can't.
fantastic. It was fantastic. So let's roll over to the actual day, which was interesting in itself because somewhere along the way of this planning this whole thing, Grand Master, Most Worshipful Brad Billings, got a hold of me and he's like, "Hey, what do you think about doing OLT and MasoniCon together?" The officer leadership training, because he has to, he loves and supports both, and he wanted to be at both. Yeah. So we pulled some strings and made that happen. Although it was it was a tough row to hoe, but I think it went off without a hitch, pretty much. There were a few, but nothing that.
And for clarification, dear listeners, our dear Rhit is a member of the Masonic Committee on for Education and Services. So, yeah. So you were an integral part of both events.
It was. My knees hurt a little bit after that one for sure. There was a lot of walking throughout that big old temple, but it made for a unique kind of day with close to 300 Masons in that building. It was quite unique. I know every vendor that was there hit a home run. That's for sure.
Right.
That's fantastic. How many vendors did we end up having there?
6, was it, Billy? Or 7?
I do not recall.
I think it was 7 if you count, because there's Grand Lodge merchandise and then Grand Lodge book sales, which are two separate, yeah.
Those are two separate committees. Yeah.
So you've got, it would have ended up being 7 that were there, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. And I love that the education committee was able to have the book table out there, because I know that, like, that's right up, everybody at MasoniCon's alley is like, oh, hey, you just, you're here for the knowledge. You just listen to a bunch of speakers. Here's a bunch of wisdom in book format, bingo.
Yeah. Which I know we sold dang near every book we bought, and we had, close to 80 different books there, and they had even more, and he didn't pack up many when I left.
Nice. It's always a good feel. It's always a good feeling to see a vendor table just clear.
Yep. Which I think our total attendance with when it was all said and done, with some people showing up day of, I think we ended up getting close to 80 attendees. That's there.
Really good.
I was really happy with that for a comeback from COVID. Kind of everybody, we just kind of got forgot about. It's been so long since we've even promoted it. So we had to build that steam back up, and I felt like we really did a good job at doing that. OLT had close to 200 with instructors and everything as well. So it was a full house.
Yeah. And I did have some people tell me that, unfortunately they had to make a choice whether they were going to OLT or they were going to attend MasoniCon. So, so there's definitely positives, but, it also meant that some people did have to, make a hard decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you should make the OLT decision every time. If you're going to be a officer in your lodge, that's really important stuff going on there. We'll be back next year. We already got our dates planned.
Okay, so then is the collaboration between OLT and MasoniCon going to happen again then?
Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. Yeah, okay. There'd be some serious arm twisting if that were the case. They both have so much to offer individually. And I don't know that it really detracted one from the other, but I'm going to tell you right now, for me individually, plus a lot on our team, it was logistically, it was really, really tough.
Okay.
It was a lot more work the day of, and even leading up to, being prepared and being good stewards for the OLT, as well as being good stewards for our guests. It really taxed the workforce. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. I think they deserve to be on their own. And while it was great for vendors and things like that, I think, when it came down to it, there was a little bit of confusion here and there. And, our guys running to help both, which was tough.
Yeah. And it's great that our guys stepped up to the plate and helped out and stuff. But that is tough, right? Because you're doing, OLT has 200 something people in attendance, right? Texas MasoniCon has 80 something, right? You are helping out with a workload where 2/3 of the people are technically not even attending your event, right?
Yeah.
Which, I'm not that, and that's not a negative thing. I'm super proud of our guys for being such great hosts. Like, that's fantastic. So,
yeah,
but it's a beating, right?
Well, and it was really, because Brad's been here, Grandmaster. He has been a part of MasoniCon from the beginning. He was one of our first speakers. He's been a huge supporter of this. So when he asked, can we do both at the same time? I'm going to move a mountain if I, to make it happen. And not that, the line coming up behind Grandmaster now is not supportive of MasoniCon. They're just not as big a part. So I don't see them making that kind of request.
Yeah. And I hope that, obviously Brad's been, most worshipful sir, right?
Yes.
Sorry, it's sometimes it's hard to catch yourself on that, but
man, I embarrassed myself bad the other day doing it. I did it in front of OLT and I felt like crawling under a rock.
Oh yeah. So part of that is that we've known the Grandmaster for a very long time. Yeah. And so sometimes it's hard to disassociate
that's not a flex. That's just we're just embarrassed by it.
Exactly. This is a lack of discipline on my part. Yeah. But yeah, so the most worshipful Grandmaster has been a big supporter of that, and he's been very vocal about it, right? And so I hope that his vocal support of Texas MasoniCon is something that people have heard and that will continue to hear and that they'll remember. And I hope that we see that, obviously different Grandmasters are going to have different priorities, and that's totally okay, right?
Yeah.
But I do hope that we see similar levels of support from 20 years from now, let's hope, right? And I hope that we're still doing this 20 years from now, because it's a great program and I feel like it gets guys really excited.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I don't think we have any detractors, but it was just a unique, having him in the Grand East. But it was a success anyway. So, I mean, it's a great way to kind of help build the steam for next year too, because there were people at OLT that were like, oh yeah, that sounds interesting, that kind of thing. So it was kind of scratching our backs as well. It was not something that wasn't worth doing.
Yeah. You want to give us a rundown on on what the breakout speakers talked about and obviously then what our keynote talked about?
Billy, you want to start from number one, because I was teaching while they were speaking.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So right off the bat was
JJ. Don't get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. No, it was Brother Jones, and he spoke about some of the challenges facing Masonry today, and it even led to a conversation where we were talking about what membership retention and attraction. So it was a good conversation. It was probably the shortest of the talks we had for the entire period. So, but yeah, it was a worthwhile talk. Following that was Robert Marshall.
Always a good one.
Yeah, no, and it was, I think my favorite part from the talk was when he was talking about the process of making coffee, right? And
of course, here we go.
Right. And he's like, after the coffee has been picked and dried, then it comes to the roasting, where most American coffee is ruined.
He tells me that all the time too. He's like, you're used to that burnt coffee.
Yeah. Well, and he's right. Most American coffee is over toasted to create uniformity, right? Because in the American coffee production process, we value uniformity of product much higher than we value overall quality of product. So, that's why you see the coffee that you get at like small batch roasters is always so crazy good, and you go, wow, I've never tasted this before.
If I drink coffee for the taste, I wouldn't drink it. I want the buzz. Wake me up.
I'm a little bit of column A, column B.
I'm getting there as I get older. I do like the flavor, but I'm still just wake up and dump Folgers down my throat.
Ooh, yeah.
We'll bully you once the recording ends.
Yeah.
Anyway,
who was fantastic.
Next? So next was David Hill.
Oh yeah,
and David Hill always has a fascinating presentation style, actually. And I've been taking speaker feedback, and I've had a couple of people tell me that they, that they weren't really, they had never listened to him talk before, but they were really impressed with his delivery.
Mm-hmm.
What makes his delivery stand out?
I think it's because he has no problems getting into the esoteric, but he does it in such a calm, unflashy way. I mean, because we all know Brother Hill pretty well, right? And and you can go into his background maybe as a therapist, but and maybe it's that type of measured cadence in their speaking pattern that really helps them shine when it comes to presenting information. Brother Dunning is the exact same way.
That's a great way to describe him. Yeah, the cadence of it.
Yeah, the measured cadence.
Yeah. Because it's like he's soothing you, and you're walking into the deep, dark part of Freemasonry, and you don't even realize it's happening. And all of a sudden you look up, it's like, oh my gosh, where have you taken me?
Right.
Yeah. It's so like, contrast that to my speaking style where, if I start talking about esoteric stuff, I start sounding like an unhinged lunatic.
Squirrel in the silver shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you start getting into the very esoteric, you don't want to be like, oh my God. It's, you want to be like, so, and now we're going to take a look at the ninth Sephirah,
Yeah. And David was the only one that was like, only an hour? I was like, only an hour? What are you talking?
Yeah.
Oh man, I fully believe that, because I've had some amazing conversations with David where I finish up the conversation or whatever, and I got it, I feel my phone buzz. The phone buzz is like, hey, where are you? Or it's like, oh, I had not realized that it was that amount of time.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Right guy.
Who
came after that?
So after that we had lunch, right, where we broke, and there was, what was it? It was catfish, if I remember correctly.
Catfish. Yep. That came from Risky's as well, which I really enjoyed it. And we broke bread with the OLT as well, all together, all right. 200, almost 300 of us, which was a unique deal. But I know fish isn't everybody's favorite, but man, I loved it.
I had heard one or two brothers ask if there was an alternative because catfish isn't kosher. So,
yeah. Well, and
that's I think something that we can take forward as hey, lesson learned. Let's try and keep it vaguely in that ballpark of kosher food.
Right, and I know some people that even if they like fish, they're not crazy about catfish.
Mm-hmm. So me personally, I'm very picky about catfish. I like catfish, but there's places that I go to where I'm like, I like eating the catfish here and not there. Right, so I get that.
Shit, man. Catfish to me.
So after we returned, and I forgot to say this before, actually, we started before Justin Jones spoke. We started with a contemplative activity with Brother Chuck Dunning again. Mm-hmm. So that was how we started the day. But we came back, and after lunch, we had another contemplative activity with Brother Chuck.
Now, was this one of his exercises from the Contemplative Lodge? It's his, I think that's his latest.
Yeah, it
Might be
is.
his latest or his second latest. He just released a new book, right? Or is that
He
about
did.
to be released?
I know I believe, actually, I may be misremembering, but I thought he was working on another book that's going to be released. The Contemplative Lodge has been released.
Yes.
I have it. I haven't yet actually had a chance to read through it though, so I'm not sure. At the beginning of the day, we started with breathing exercise. In contemplative meditation, whereas after lunch, actually, we started with some chanting. That was actually pretty interesting to bring everybody to, the same focus.
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
So I like that, because if it's just like a strictly like meditative contemplative exercise, if you're doing that right after lunch, you can lose a lot of people, just they'll drop off. But if you're doing chanting, that's something that you're doing more actively, so you can engage the material contemplatively, but also in an active way that keeps you alert, which is kind of nice. That's fantastic.
Well, in here, a room of about 80 men chanting, it creates a special ambiance.
Well, I missed out. Yeah, so for and kind of tacking on here, for our listeners that don't know about this, Brother Chuck Dunning, who we've mentioned in the podcast already, is he wrote a book a while back. Like he initially released it anonymously, and it was called The Contemplative Mason. And it was at the time completely revolutionary, still is really. It changed a lot of people's Masonic trajectories and influenced a lot of really great esoteric Masons. And he re-released it under his he finally he unanonymized it and revealed that he was the author, and several years later wrote a follow-up to it called The Contemplative Lodge. And so whereas the Contemplative Mason is very heavy on the theory of contemplative practice and contains a good amount of individual contemplative exercises, the Contemplative Lodge is almost entirely working exercises for groups in a Masonic setting. And both books are incredible. I can personally attest to the success and fantastic quality of the Contemplative Lodge, because when I was sitting as master, many times when we were conferring degrees, we would have a contemplative exercise from that book before we started the degree, and you could feel the atmosphere in the room shift dramatically. It was very powerful.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So who was our speaker after the lunch chanting?
Okay, so after that was Jack Harper, so the Grand Generalissimo of the Grand Encampment of the United States of America.
Yes.
And again, he's also, Jack is a very, he is a wealth of knowledge. He's a past master of Texas Ledger Research, so the man certainly knows how to give a great presentation.
Yeah, very engaging.
Yeah, Brad Kohenke also followed Jack.
I didn't get to hear any of his. I got to hear most of Jack's, but none of Kohenke's.
Right. Yeah, and actually, so that ended up the breakout speakers, and then Right Worshipful Jim Rumsey gave the keynote speech at the end of the day, which was again, like Jack, he is a past master of Texas Ledger Research. And just if you have not heard Right Worshipful Rumsey speak, you are definitely missing out. So I would encourage you to find one of his forums. Being on Committee on Work, he travels the state frequently. He gives excellent, forums during his exams, as well as talks at lodges. So always fascinating. I am always educated. More on the ritual and the history of Texas Masonry in particular after listening to him speak.
What I love about him speaking is that you can tell he's so good at dropping the teasers. Like he has a factoid, which he spoke about the ritual. He has a factoid, though, that he's working towards, and he keeps dropping these teasers throughout his speech. And he's like, now follow along. Now, this is that one guy that did that one thing. You know what I mean? And I love how he crescendos into that factoid about, either where the ritual came from or some crazy thing that happened during it, which you would think the evolution of the Texas ritual listening to how that happened would be like watching paint dry, but it's actually really dadgum interesting.
Yeah. And his talk was really about the grand lecturers who used to really set the ritual for the Grand Lodge of Texas until we adopted a formal ritual of our own.
Yeah.
Because the way it used to be is however the grand lecturer exemplified it, that was the ritual.
And it was not the same in between grand lecture and grand lecture.
Yeah. And that's why you hear people talk about the Houston work, right? Or the San Antonio work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, Jim was talking about this kind of stuff in a different context, and at one point he mentioned that one of the grandmasters of Texas had traveled all over the state, including to regions that were not normally visited by grandmasters at that time, and some far away remote regions of the state, compared to, say, Houston, Dallas, Austin, etc. And the grandmaster said in his report about the place that he'd visited that their work was excellent. However, he did not know from what jurisdiction it was. Because it was extremely well done. It was just not Texas work. And so it's just kind of funny to think about. I'm withholding locations and making things vague on purpose, but it's just kind of funny. I think one of the reasons why that talk that Right Worshipful Jim gives on the grand lecturers and the evolution of the ritual is so interesting is that he does it's very fact laden and it's very informative, but he also does tell it as kind of like an adventure story, right? This is the adventure of the Grand Lodge ritual, and it's the Grand Lodge ritual is almost like its own character in this story that he tells, and I think that's one of the things that he brings it to life in a very powerful sort of way.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and not to ruin it for anybody who wasn't there, but what was interesting was, as he was talking about each of the grand lecturers that had been appointed, was how many never actually exemplified the work.
And it was like Grand Lodge law too. They passed a law. They have to exemplify it at Grand Lodge, before Grand Lodge, or during this time at Grand Lodge, and it never happened.
Right.
Year after year, it would never happen. And he would always draw back on that. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, and another thing, they didn't exemplify the work again." It was fantastic. No doubt about it. Which I got to see quite a bit of his as well, and typically by that time in the day, there's a lot of long faces, but the speakers kept everybody engaged. Everybody left with some pep in their step. It was a good ending to a good day.
Yeah, that
is super fantastic to hear.
Yeah. So. And I mean, there were some challenges. One thing that I think there's a couple of things that we need to take back to, planning for next year. And it's not anything that really detracted, but ways to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
I know from being the only person in the room, the one thing that I hope we have next year is that we assign someone to be kind of like an usher at the door.
Cat herder.
Yeah. So when a presentation is about to happen, they go out into the hallway and make sure that everyone knows, to get inside. Because that's not if you are introducing the speakers and making sure that they have their presentations going, so on time and ready to go for when they speak. You can't really leave that station to go wrangle people in the hallway.
Right.
Yeah. That I think that there are a lot of little details that we picked up and added on our checklist as well, for things that, can help things run a little bit smoother like that for sure. Yeah. But that's what this has always been, a learning
it's almost
process.
Like you kind of almost have to have like a Tyler almost. That,
yeah.
The Tyler, he doesn't have to be outside of the room necessarily, but he has, to have at one point in time where he shows up and wrangles people outside the door to inside the door.
Yeah.
That does make sense. What
like
was
if
something,
you go to,
what was something that you guys are adding to the lessons learned list that you didn't even expect to be adding to the lessons learned list?
I think the big one was we're really going to look into sponsorships this next year. A lot of the other cons do them, to have different lodges or bodies or even individuals involved in the process in supporting it a little more than just ticket prices. But the whole point of sponsors, what I was thinking is a way to get some, swag in the bag, some takeaways, we'll all share the, credit, but also help bring down ticket prices. Not that they're a lot to go to the MasoniCon, but the more reasonable the price, I think the easier it is to talk yourself into going.
Yeah. I mean, you could work, presumably you could work with a Western wear company to raffle off a pair of boots, maybe, that kind of thing, or to award a pair of boots as a door prize.
Yeah, there's all kinds and we're going to have to kind of kick around what we do with that sponsorship. Maybe you get a ticket or two, that kind of thing. But it definitely, like, we'll have a bag or a t-shirt with their name on it, something of that idea. And hopefully we can come to something with fruition with that. But if that doesn't happen next year, it will soon afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, and it could be something as simple as a shirt that has the big Texas MasoniCon logo on the front, and then has the list of sponsors on the back. That's all that I see that all the time. Golf tournaments and stuff. Yeah. Very popular item.
And that's a winner for us, because if we can get a t-shirt in people's hands for free, they're going to wear it a few times, and there's our promotion for next year. So
yeah, I mean, I wear my Esotericon shirt quite frequently, and it has the Texas MasoniCon logo on it, but so it advertises us, but at the same time it definitely advertises Esotericon,
which is a good point, because that's another thing we want to do, is not only have sponsorship ourselves, but we want to start sponsoring these other MasoniCons. So if you do go to Esotericon or Kansas Con or any of that, hopefully we can find a way to support those as well,
right?
Because these things are so valuable. Even if we can't make it, I'd love to support it.
So one thing I didn't anticipate that was Robert Marshall had he was a few minutes late starting his talk because he had an issue he had to attend to. He traveled to MasoniCon with his wife and the newborn, so absolutely understandable that it took a couple of minutes, but
I guess so.
So while sitting there though, so I'm looking at a room full of people and I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to do something to fill some time. So I had asked Brother Jones to come back and say, hey, would you mind doing a Q&A? And I know in the past, some speakers had presented their topic and then asked if there were any questions, but not everybody did it. This time, I pointedly made sure at the end of every one to have a Q&A session. And there were a lot of people who told me that it made it even more engaging, because now they could talk about the topics after listening to it, or flesh out additional points or gain additional insight. And it turns out that last minute, like, crap, I need to do something, is something that I think going forward, we should make sure that every speaker is prepared to have at least 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A after their topic.
Yeah, I totally agree.
What if, in addition to advertising the individual speakers, we also advertised the subject of their talk, so that people could, say, hey, I'm coming to see Rhit Moore at MasoniCon, and he's going to talk about XYZ. And I've known about this for 2 months because I saw the advertisement saying that he's going to talk about that. And I have all these questions that if he doesn't answer them by delivering his talk, I'm going to ask them when he's done.
Yeah, I know. I love
that. Could serve as a good warm up.
Yeah, and I think we even, we had some, not that we had issues, but I think speakers wanted to know what other speakers were talking about, so there's no overlap. Where in the past it's just been like, I just tell them, as long as it pertains to masonry. I didn't want to put any pressure on anybody because sometimes they don't really have it finalized until a month before or something. But we just need a general topic idea anyway, to where it wouldn't put any undue pressure. And in the end, if they change, then it is what it is, but I think that's a great way to kind of prime the pump. Here's the subject matter you're going to be hearing from this speaker.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Yeah, it may be something that somebody's been wanting to hear about for a long time, and that will get their butt in the seat, to where if you don't know what they're going to talk about, it's, you know what I mean? There's no draw to that besides their name, so it would help. That's the more information, the better.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, August 18th, 2023 is Friday. That's the date for the festive board next year. And then the 19th, it's the third weekend in August. That's when MasoniCon 4 is planned. We already have our keynote speaker locked down. We've got 3 breakout speakers locked down. It's going to be off the chain, baby.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Yes, I'm stoked. I get stoked. I get so fired up right after it ends and so ready for next year and to start planning, but it's like, all right, catch your breath. Don't get burned out. You know what I mean? Have a good time. But man, we've got some excited speakers that are, excited to be doing it. And they're well known for what they do. So I'm excited to get that information out. And we're going to push that out much earlier. So keep an eye for that. We're not going to wait for Grand Lodge to start selling tickets and all that. We're going to get the rubber on the road a lot earlier when it comes to who the speakers are and getting tickets sold.
Yeah. But I do believe the plan is to still have the Grand Lodge special.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to have a lot of different ideas about the special, because I've been thinking about maybe traveling the state. And if we show up to this lodge in San Antonio, we'll have a code for you to get a discount, maybe if you show up to our stated meeting, we'll give you a code, just something to kind of keep the buzz going and kind of promote visiting and, that kind of stuff as well. All the good things Masonry has to offer, we'll try to promote.
Yeah.
All right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be good, man. All right, gentlemen, y'all got any final thoughts? We got to wrap this bad boy up. We're getting long-winded. We're good at that, though.
Yeah, we are good at that. The only thought I have is that I hope that I don't have a kid at the same time next year.
Give Sarah a rest.
Yeah. Hopefully I'll be able to enjoy MasoniCon 2023 in its fullness.
Yeah. Well, fellas, it was good getting back together with y'all. We got to do this more often.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I guess until we ride again, this is Rhit Moore signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton.
Nope. Oh. We'll have an editing moment there.
Try it again.
Yeah. You go first, Rhit, and then Billy go, and then I'll go.
This is Rhit Moore signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.
And this is Gabe Yagish signing off.
I'm leaving every bit of that in there.
No. You monster.